We are the Knights of Awakening. And today we have an interesting little topic that I'm going to go over. As the host of the Labyrinth, I'm doing this as a Knights of Awakening video because it really has more to do with being knightly and the analysis of the knightly path. And in it, we're going to use the Dark Knight himself as a kind of example of the question to be asked, and that is, should heroes kill? Now, this question was one that kind of brought up between me and Justin and a little bit of discussion, and it started with my playing of the Arkham Knight game, which is a fantastic little game, and in it, Batman does not use lethal force. That's the Dark Knight, for those that don't know. It's very intriguing that a character that is considered one of the darkest and, really most, I don't know how to put it, stealthy, dark, synonyms for dark, shady, underhanded, perhaps brutal, there's a good one to describe Batman, also is the most humane. He's the least likely to kill, even the least likely to cause long-term, life-impacting injuries. He is the best of the best. And that makes that kind of easy for him. And Justin and I talked a little bit about the nature of this. Before I go too much further, I want to hit on this first. Whenever you ask a question, especially using a character like Batman as your focal point for some of the discussion of whether or not heroes should kill, the default is immediately what it seems like you're challenging, meaning since Batman does not kill, it almost seems as if, though, we're challenging that maybe he should. And that's not what I'm doing here. In a fictional world, heroes need to be pure. They need to be inspiring. They need to be idealistic, and they need to bring those qualities to us. We set them on a pedestal to be what we can't be, so that we can inspire ourselves and inspire our children to be more, to be better. They're there to inspire the next generation, but they're not real. And in their lack of reality, this becomes a thing to deal with. Now, a lot of people are going to ask why, I'm going to circulate this video through all the different communities I'm in, what this has to do with being pagan, or what it has to do with mysticism, and what it has to do with that. We must always be questioning how we view the world around us to fully understand it. This is the philosophy part. This is asking what it means to be a person and where your limits are as a human being. And the question of whether or not heroes should kill questions as a knight what we should and shouldn't be doing in our life. So this is meant to hit on a broader topic. This isn't just hitting on the fictional worlds. It's using them as a medium to explore that idea. And with that, I guess the first thing we need to hit on is real-world heroes versus characters in fiction. As I've said, I really think in fiction, it's great that heroes are able to not kill. But in a real-world conflict, the common man as a hero, as someone intervening in a dangerous situation versus a character like Batman, well, I don't know about you, but my bench press is significantly under 500 pounds. It's significantly under 300 pounds, to be real honest. I'm pretty sure it's actually under 200 pounds. I'm a pretty big guy. The real world limits for someone like me going into a conflict versus a character like Batman are significant. In a life or death fight, I would have to choose life. And by that, I would have to choose death. For most of us out there, any kind of conflict like these characters get into, we would have to kill to survive eventually. Maybe not on day one, or maybe not every time. But eventually, if we were running into these many dangerous situations, we would have to kill, or we would wind up dead. And that's another factor in this analysis of these characters that we use as an inspiration point. We really have to ask, is it realistic what they're doing? Which obviously it's not, but even to any degree. And I think the thing we need to recognize is that ultimately the nature of these conflicts that we see these heroes in are idealized. And moreover, they occur a lot more often. The odds of you entering a conflict in which you're going to have to defend yourself physically are pretty slim. You know, in the grand scheme of things, most people never see a violent conflict, and if they do, they almost never see one where they have to end a life. But the question is, from a moral standpoint, is it still heroic to do so? The nature of real-world heroes is very different from these fictional heroes. And part of that is the fact that in the real world, even with all of Batman's training and skills, gadgets, and things of that nature, he'd probably be dead by the 12th or 13th day of his going out on patrol. Part of that's because no human being could train as much as he would need to maintain the optimum level of capability and be on patrol for as long as he is. There's not enough hours in the day. There's not enough nutrients that you could put in your body. Even Olympic-level athletes are not at this character's level of capability. And it makes it kind of easy to write a character at that level of capability who doesn't kill. We talk about this character being the most human of the superheroes, but ultimately he's superhuman, regardless. He is the fastest human runner at human running speeds, the strongest human lifter at human lifting strength. He has the most endurance of any endurance athlete. He can box for 30 rounds without getting completely wiped out. He can run a marathon after that. He is the peak physical condition, and in that we can afford him the ability against mundane criminals and mundane foes to not wear or tire. As Justin said to me, he's written as a character, and his problems are solved in the moment of the writing. In the comic book, they get solved for him. Batman can do whatever Batman needs to do to survive, to make a difference in the world. Whereas the mundane heroes, and this is where we're going to get into police officers and firefighters, where we're going to get into military police and soldiers on the battlefield. These people don't have that option to be, number one, that physically good. I've known a lot of servicemen and women who have went overseas or who have done their part over here. And none of them are at Batman level. Some of them I could probably beat in an arm wrestling match. They're better in a lot of other areas than I am. And in a war, I'd rather have them out on the front lines than me. And that's not saying that I'm a coward. It's saying that their body's more conditioned for warfare than mine is. Physical strength isn't everything in a war. In fact, it's not even a tenth of everything. But my point is that even with their conditioning in some areas being better than mine and some areas being less, they're not Batman. They don't have the hyper reaction time, the high speed ability to move and think on the fly, a utility belt full of $1 billion of gadgets, an armored bat tank, which, anyway, they don't have these things. And moreover, even with the best military gear, if they had all of those things, they would still tire after a marathon. They would still tire after 12 rounds of boxing or fighting. So 30 minutes of nonstop fighting would wear any of them out. Even the best that I know, I doubt could go for more than an hour fighting. Batman can go for 5 because that's the peak of human physical condition. That's assuming every single muscle fiber is honed in that way. These people, I've met them. They are your day-to-day heroes, and they cannot output that much power for that period of time and still be functional. They are mortal, and in being mortal, they're at mortal risk when danger comes about. And this is where the Batman analogy starts to break into the real world. Batman doesn't kill because Batman doesn't have to kill to continue his crusade day in and day out. Batman has the magic of writing to make him super strong, super fast, super durable. And yeah, he's human. But he's at the peak on every single point of humanity. Intelligence, reaction time, wisdom, awareness, sensitivity to movement. And his training is a level of training that if you were to really undertake it, would take 100 years or more. I know a lot of martial artists who've dabbled in many systems and who've learned a lot from many different areas, but they're not masters in every single one. And yet this character is a master of all these things. It's easy to not kill. So the real world hero has to make decisions that are high speed, that are in the moment, that are life and death at that moment. And in that, they aren't really making a choice whether or not to kill so much as to defend themselves. When a police officer draws a gun, they've drawn a gun. They have no choice. In any situation like this, they don't make a decision necessarily to kill, but they don't necessarily make a decision not to. They make a decision to draw a gun and fire. They make a decision to take action. And if the repercussion is death, so be it. In almost every conflict you enter into, you don't aim to kill. You aim to strike, to hit. And to touch on this, I guess, for the metaphysical, because I am our metaphysical host, and I really kind of cover that stuff more than I do anything else. Even in metaphysical conflict, you're not really aiming to kill so much as you are to strike. And you up the level of force until one of two things happens. Either the conflict is resolved or your enemy is dead, which resolves the conflict. That's all conflict. Drawing a gun and drawing a circle are no different in this respect. We're not aiming for the head, we're aiming for center mass. And that's life. Batman has hyper reaction times and hypersensitivity, hyper awareness. He can throw a pencil, okay, with pinpoint precision and hit a target. And in that, he never misses. He never has to worry about whether or not he hit their throat or their eye. He knows he's going to hit the weapon right out of their hand every time. I know a lot of sharp shots. I know a lot of people that are really good with a gun under good conditions and that are fairly good with their accuracy and their precision under more stressful conditions. But I don't know anyone who in a straight up fight against 5 people can pinpoint a gun in mid-motion as it's being drawn from a pocket or a holster and knock it out of midair with a boomerang or with another gun even. With a bullet from the gun. Yeah, I mean, hey, if you could do it with a boomerang, I guess you could throw the gun at it and knock a gun out of someone's hand. The thing is, this character isn't human. And I mean that, not just that they're not real, but they're not at the human levels. More human characters that get thrown into these situations often do kill, and often have to kill, otherwise their crusade would end. If our police officers were to take the view of this, or people that are intervening on another's behalf were to take the view of this every time, that no matter what they couldn't kill, they'd be defenseless. Now, with this, I got a little bit more to hit on, of course. Even with the time to plan a defensive strategy, death is a possible result of any violent conflict. I kind of hit on that already. But no matter how much planning, training, and timing you've got, in the real world, a character like Batman, assuming he were able to even be at all those peaks, eventually that batarang is going to go astray because of another bullet in motion, or because a criminal is going to reactively take and move the wrong way. Just the same way you run into a punch when you're boxing without thinking about it, and they're going to get killed. They're going to get, at best, maimed for life in a way that they never recover from, but at worst, they're going to get killed. But, as I said, I wanted to hit on the philosophy of this for all the different groups that this is going to hit on. And I stand by that. The more mundane take on this is that a lot of times we put ourselves on the high horse when we make the decision to kill every day. Now, I don't mean you're actively going out there and strangling someone. At least, I don't think you are. I know that Justin is working on breaking the bad habit of smoking. So he may have strangled someone in the past 24 hours. And by in a year from now, he's going to look back on this video and he's going to go, man, I remember that. And yeah, I did. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a direct action that kills. It can be inaction or an action that leads to death that, on some level, at the end of the day, is killing. And we like to set ourselves on the high horse. We like to think that we are expunged from that. And I know very few people that are in a financial situation to be expunged from it. I'm not expunged from it. Talking to you on a machine that I built from the ground up. In fact, almost every single component is new, save, I think, the hard drive and the case, the power supply. Everything else is new. Keyboard. Right down to the monitor, which I'm sure was made with some kind of cheap labor that resulted in someone's death at some point for the factories to be set up or for the country to set up the processes that do it. When we go and we make decisions to buy cheaper goods, cheaper food, cheaper technology or clothing, we play into labor camps and labor fields. And even if you don't want to look at it that far and say, well, that's so far removed, how can I be held responsible for that? And which is the mentality that allows it to happen. But even if we go away from that, every time I enter a Walmart, I am telling that corporation that because I don't have the money to shop at the best of the places, that it's okay for them to pay their workers a minimum salary, a minimum wage that is ridiculously low. Every time I eat at a fast food place, I'm telling them, hey, this is okay. This is right. And those people may work themselves to death. Their children may die as a result of poor medical care. And I am not so unenlightened as to remove myself from the knowledge of that action, and yet I continue about life because I recognize that life is the evolution of life and death in motion, constantly circling, constantly moving, and that while I can make changes in my immediate environment, the bigger environment outside of using magic directly, not that I've ever shut down a major chain store or anything like that with magic, not that I haven't either, or at least local branches in the past. My point is this. Outside of using magic to influence a larger environment, we're kind of limited to what we can do on a day-to-day to make an impact. And even then, you know, a lot of that was my younger years. Since then, I've gotten a little bit wiser, a little bit older, and I've realized that using magic in those ways often has a worse repercussion. Yeah, you may be saving the worker from that corporate monster, but you may have just unemployed them, possibly for life, depending on the area that you live in or their situation for transportation and work. Power and energy systems we use are built off of death. I don't even want to get into what goes into the oil market and what happens to secure our ability to power our machines. So that's it. I think we just killed the hero. God's damn, you know. Here we've got Justin, calls himself the Wizard Killer because he can take anyone who feels that they're that superior to the rest of the world and he can knock them down a peg and make them rethink their life, force them to look at the truths of the world around them. And here I am, the hero killer. I've just wiped out the ability for you to look at yourself and still see yourself as heroic. And I didn't mean to do that. So before I go any further, let me see if I can't pick you back up and help you rebuild yourself. You see, the thing is, while we cannot avoid these more minor impacts, although they still cause major impacts on the world, we may not have the ability to extend that far, but as long as we hold to the heroic ideals, we still set out to do good things in the world. And while we cannot be Batman or Superman or any of these heroic characters, we can allow those concepts to inspire us on day-to-day things. And this means recognizing that being stronger means using that strength towards the good of those around you. Be it helping the little old lady across the street, be it helping take care of someone's kids when they need to go for a job interview, or any number of 1,000 things that you can do as a local hero. It's not always rushing into burning buildings. It's not always facing armed criminals. The idea of these heroes is that they exist as people that set out to make a difference. And in that, they found where their strengths were, and they used those strengths to make a difference. And we don't have the strengths that they do. We're not Superman. We're not Batman. We don't have that kind of power to set out there and change the world on that level. But we can make changes. And for the mystical community that we're viewing this, for the groups that this gets posted to, and I'm not going to hit all the groups. I'm going to hit a few that I feel are a little bit more philosophically minded, that I feel will benefit a little bit more from this, that they may find this more valuable, because they tend to hit on more philosophical topics. For those out there, this goes for magic doubly. We cannot always make the decision how our spell is going to affect the world, especially if we enter metaphysical combat, because it's like physical combat. You're kind of firing a gun. You may have the intent to wound, but it's still a gun at the end of the day. What you can do, though, is make the decision how you're going to focus most of your time and energy in towards helping people, making a better difference, and making the world a better place through it. At the very least, you can focus on a neutral zone of action that doesn't impact the world in a negative way. And this is kind of the core of mystical philosophy, and understanding why the heroic path is so important, why understanding the knightly path is so important. So, I guess I kind of hit on it. End of the day, the answer is, should heroes kill? The question is, should heroes kill? And the answer is, no. But life isn't fair. They shouldn't have to. If the world were fair, every time Justin goes out on patrol, the gods would instill mighty strength into his limbs so that he could run faster and hit harder than every person out there. A man would draw a gun on him, and before they could go to draw the gun, Justin would be like the Flash, hitting them so hard that he would knock them halfway across the room, but plot contrivance would prevent them from dying when they slammed headfirst into a wall. Because plot contrivances would be written into the world if it were fair. Should versus have to. The other side of that, using him as a good example, and he's my buddy and I like him, and he knows that I know that I can use him in this as a good example. He has a wife and kids that he's got to come back to. And I know a number of officers that are in his shoes in this respect. And to the best of my knowledge, none of them have had to take lives, though some have had some very close calls. And I would rather, even if he shouldn't, because the world should be better than that, I would rather he did, if it meant him coming back to that family, coming back to the people that love him. Because the person trying to kill him, I do value their life less than his. If it was within my power in magic to strike that person dead to preserve his life, you'd bet I'd do it. I'm not that quick with my magic. It still takes me, a couple days to achieve a death result at least. Never managed to do it in like a minute. Not yet. I will keep practicing. So no, I'm not. I really don't do that much offensive magic outside of clearing out spirits anymore. But realistically, if I could point when someone was about to, kill an officer in cold blood, or just because they feel they have the right to, or they feel that they can't go to prison for whatever reason, for whatever else they've done that they have to go, yeah, I'd do it. Without a doubt. And I would feel no less or more heroic for it. By the same token, handed a gun and given the choice between any of these people's lives and the criminal, I would shoot the criminal without question. I would probably need more clips if I was allowed to make that decision everywhere all at once. Again, not within my power. And realistically, I can say these things honestly, knowing the kind of man I am because I've done the introspection. The point of this video is to get you to think, and get you to look at the world in a different way, and to consider the nature of life and death and the heroic ideal. Now, should heroes kill? They should never have to. The world should be better than that. We shouldn't even need heroes if the world was right, though. So really, the question isn't should heroes kill? But the question is, do you sometimes have to do things that you didn't set out to do to make a better world? And yeah, you do. You really do. Every person I know who's an environmentalist drives a car. They focus on making the world a better place, but they have to burn a fossil fuel to do it. They travel to conventions. They, host seminars. They do all these amazing things to better the world in the way that they see it. and they have to fly on airplanes and drive cars and be on trains and all manner of transportation. And that's life. Because you've got to have small sacrifices to equal big gains in this world. We just don't like to look at them. So the goal of this video is to get you to look at those, make you think about that a little bit. And it was a kind of a dark topic, I guess. It was kind of a hard pill to swallow. This is going to go out to a handful of different mystical communities. Ones that I know that it can be approved in, or where I have authority to approve it, or where I feel I have authority to approve it. Ones where that, you know, I'm hopeful that their administration will approve it. I think I might talk to a couple administrators first about posting the video before I put it up everywhere. So it might take a while for it to circulate. I want to thank you for joining us for this thought-provoking episode. You know, end of the day, I hope this makes you a better person. Makes you more aware of the world, but also makes you realize how important it is to hold to these heroic ideals. Because the other side of all of this is a hero should never want to kill. A hero should never want to have to ask this question in a moment's notice. The hero's goal should be able to save everyone without worrying about this. But in that moment, they shouldn't have this weighing on their mind either. At the moment of conflict, you do what you have to do to survive and to protect others. And it's a kind of a discord that happens in the soul that weighs on anyone who's ever saved a life by taking another. And it's not an easy thing. And it's not something that we look at all too often in the different communities. But I think for the hero and the hero's journey for the knight, it's important that we ask these questions from time to time. Not all the time. You haven't seen a video like this in a while. But I think it has some value. To sum it up, you're not Batman. If you were, you would never have to kill. But if you're in a situation where you have no other choice, kill or be killed, live. And if that means killing, then that's what you have to do. But recognize those situations are few and far between. And if you're going into any situation with the words, I'm going to kill, you probably had another option, at least initially. If you go into a situation saying, no matter what though, I'm not going to kill, you're kind of guaranteeing that you're set to die at some point. This has been my take on this. I'm sure the other hosts will have their own takes. I'm sure we'll have some videos come up addressing different points in this video or things of that nature. I was glad to have this time with you here. I want to thank you for joining me, for listening to my inane ramble inspired by a Batman video game in which he has a tank that doesn't kill, and a conversation with a true hero in the world, an officer who goes out there every day and puts his life on the line, because real heroes have it rough. They wind up with physical injuries, and it's not even glorious ones all the time, but they wind up beaten and broken, because that's what the world does to us, and yet they still put their lives out there to make a difference. So, at the end of the day, thank you. Like, share, and subscribe, and awaken the night within.